All right.
Nice.
Hello,
Hi.
Franz. So good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, good talking to you. Time for an
Welcome,
update.
everyone, here to the State of the Martech 2022 session as part of Martech Day. So excited to hear you could join us. By the way, the official term is apparently Merry Martech Day, not Happy Martech Day, because we love the alliteration. You have two hosts, for the next couple hours here. I'm Scott Brinker. I am the editor of chiefmartech.com. I've been writing on the intersection of marketing and technology for, over 14 years now. And I'm also the VP of Platform Ecosystem at HubSpot. And my collaborator this year, Franz.
Yes, thank you, Scott. My name is Frans Riemersma. Forget about the surname, it's unpronounceable. Just call me Frans R. I'm founder of Martech Tribe, so we help companies with selecting software and benchmarking. And for that, we do a lot of research, and that's actually what we really love to do with a great team. I've been doing so for the last 20, 30 years. I have a background in marketing, started coding, developing, even have been in the Martech area myself in terms of VP R&D for a Martech vendor in Germany for a couple of years. So yeah, and now teaming up with Scott, researching, exploring everything to learn all there is to learn about Martech.
And we're so excited, Franz and I were the coordinators of this effort, but as you'll learn, there were a tremendous number of contributors and collaborators in this year's Martech Landscape. But also, we wanted to, when releasing the landscape this year and hosting the Stack Is, wanted this to be bigger, than just the work we were doing. And so this is why we suggested that, hey, let's pick the first Tuesday in May and call it Martech Day. And there are a number of folks who are, doing other releases and celebrations and events throughout this day. We hope if you haven't this year, perhaps in future years, you will consider sending flowers or buying lunch for your Martech marketing operations team. They always deserve it. But I'd like to also say a huge thank you to the sponsors. The scale of this research project has just mushroomed over the years. And as you'll see in a little bit here, the technology behind it has also expanded dramatically. Just the sheer expense of that has grown. And so we had 6 sponsors this year who contributed generously to making this all happen. And so I very briefly want to just be able to give a shout out to each of them here. So our good friends at Learning Experience Alliance, formerly Martech Alliance, they say it is Martech Madness. To celebrate Martech Day, LXA, Learning Experience Alliance, is offering 24% off all events and courses for 24 hours. Keep upgrading your skills, knowledge, and network. Head to lxahub.com for details. Our good friends at OfferFit. A/B testing can be effective for lifecycle marketing, but it takes too long and doesn't scale. OfferFit replaces A/B testing with self-learning AI that proactively experiments and automatically makes unique, optimized decisions for each of your customers along multiple dimensions: channel, message, incentive, timing, and frequency. Companies using OfferFit AI have seen campaign uplift of at least 20%, and in some cases, as much as 300%. Workato is the leading enterprise automation platform, enabling marketing and sales teams to integrate their apps and automate business workflows. It enables companies to drive real-time outcomes from business events. And I see they appear in a number of the stacks we'll be looking at later. SaaS, a new era of CX, requires a new level of marketing. SaaS's Martech suite provides real-time event detection and AI-powered journey orchestration powered by a best-in-class CDP. And Amplitude. Amplitude is the modern digital analytics platform that enables marketers to measure and optimize metrics across the entire customer journey. Join marketing teams using Amplitude like HubSpot, Intuit, Canva, and Walmart. And then last but certainly not least, our good friends here at Goldcast, who have created the platform that we are using for the event here today. It has been absolutely a delight to work with as an event organizer. And I think you'll hopefully have a really great experience with it as an attendee here too. So with that, let's just kick off with like the number one thing that we're pretty sure you came here for, which was the marketing technology landscape. Now, this has been a crazy journey. Many of you know we produced like the first version of this landscape in 2011, had around 150 companies on it at the time, which again, in 2011 felt like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. 150 companies, how will this, surely this is all gonna collapse and consolidate. And it did quite the opposite. You know, Martech was really, you know, perhaps one of the first industries to really experience this explosion from software in the cloud. And so as it grew exponentially over the years, this is also where I ended up meeting Frans, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I remember it well. Back in 2019, we started looking into the Google Sheets that you were sharing, and that was absolutely great. And that's really, for me, that was the kickoff of something like crowdsource this data, and that's what we continue to do after today. So everybody is more than welcome to chip in and help out. So yeah, back in 2019, we saw your list. We used that to find Twitter handles, to find the headquarters of each of those companies. We found that 73% of the database back then was US based, and I'm located in Europe, and a whole bunch of people here said, hey, I know a tool, and they give local support in local languages. That's what our clients want, in addition to, you know, the great platforms from the US. So we started teaming up with a whole bunch of people. We started calling it the Tribe. So that's how it ended up being Martech Tribe. And the fun part was every year, I think we've been handing over 1,000 to you for the last 3 years. If you go to the next slide, I believe that's where we see the European landscape that we launched last year, which was a 46% growth compared to the year before. It's amazing. And you see down below, you see there are a whole bunch of names. You really have to zoom in and put on some extra glasses, I think. But you can see and read there, we had already there 120 contributors. Right now we're at 420-ish. It's amazing. And we can't do this without your help to validate, source new tools. And it's really, really amazing. And I think, yeah, Scott, maybe it's time to move over to you.
Oh, yep. Well, I think, right, this is the big popcorn moment. I actually meant to like pop some popcorn so I could sit here and be eating it. But all right, seeing as I failed to bring the appropriate props, with no further ado, let us reveal to you the look of the 2022 global marketing technology landscape. And don't worry, we are going to zoom into this. But maybe first, let's begin with just a few stats. So the total number of vendors in the global landscape in 2020 was 8,000. People are always talking about like, isn't there consolidation in Martech? Don't, you know, like companies either get acquired or go away? And the answer is yes, they do. 972 of the vendors that we had in 2020 went away over the past 2 years, whether in a good way for an acquisition or a not so good way, which is about 12% churn, you know, over a 24-month time period, which, yeah, is pretty significant churn. But at the same time, 2,904 additional Martech vendors were either launched or newly discovered by us in, you know, the research, you know, far outpacing, you know, so the inflows still far outpacing the outflows, which brought us to the total of 9,932. And that was from having to review like 5,365 that came in, and we had to disqualify nearly 2,500 of them. So yeah, just so you rest assured, this isn't just anything makes it on the Martech landscape. This is definitely where the labor of love comes from. So let's yeah, take a look at it a little bit more. All right, we need to, you know, plug in you know, what this looks like for the total progression. And we were also able to update this graph as well, too, for those of you who prefer a more quantitative view. It is a total of 6,521% growth over this 11-year time period. So Whew. Part of what we also did was took a look at how different categories within the landscape had evolved in the past 2 years. The light versions are from the 2020 landscape. The dark versions are from 2022. You can see all of them grew, by net number of new vendors, but there was particular growth in content and experience related solutions, social and relationships, and also management. Part of my theory on content experience and social and relationships, and even to a certain extent commerce and sales, are these are the interfaces where marketing meets the outside world, and there's just so much opportunity for innovation and differentiation there. I think that's one of the reasons why that area continues to grow. But Franz, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a great stat, and I use a similar stat when I teach at business schools. And here I put my hat on as a history teacher in Martech. So let's say the first decade of this century, really, it was all about CRM, making sure we just have our clients in one place. And then the next decade, I think it was marketing automation. So we moved from the yellow one to the orange one, and have our leads in one place. And then we scratched our ears and we're like, okay, so now what? We know our leads, we know our clients. What do they do actually? And this is now the era of data, trying to understand all the touch points. This is where CDPs come in, for instance. And I think that this decade is now the real era of CDPs. And still you see there's not a lot of growth in there. We had a conversation before and wondering why. And I think, and we concluded something like, data is really self-optimizing all the time, the way you do it, machine learning, etc. Whereas content, and I think that's the fourth decade, the fourth wave, so to speak, of Martech, is all about content, making sure we must customize content. And you'll see later in one of the next slides that particularly here in Europe, we struggle with that because we have so many languages and different cultures and different strategies. Because a top brand, top high-end brand in the UK can maybe be positioned as a challenger brand in France. So you don't only need a different language, you just need a whole different set of content and imagery and photography and what have you. And this is all, fragmented. And that's, I think, why you see also an explosion, especially in social and content area. That's my take.
Awesome. Well, listen, since you brought up the growth happening within different regions and countries throughout Europe, this is really your area of expertise, my friend. Tell us about the incredible growth you've seen.
Yeah, so we're tracking growth for the last couple of years in the different countries. And growth, we have to be very specific. And I liked it. I want to zoom in on what you said earlier. So these are not only new tools or startups. These are all new to us, also new to us. So it's, we do the best we can to find new tools and make sure they're in there. And I have to confess, we updated the database this morning, 9,932, and I found a new one today. Somebody connected to me on LinkedIn and said, I might be a candidate. And yes, so there we go, already new and outdated. And I think that's a very good reflection of what's happening in Martech all the time. But you see it here. And if you look at the astonishing growth in Australia, it's, of course, there could be a boom in startups, but it's really all the credits to the team of the Lumery of Juan Mendoza, who helped us out this year greatly. And the same applies for Jens Polonsky in Germany, who helped out to give it a big push over there. So, or Mafalda Martins in Portugal, and we have Carlos with his team in the UK. Richard Nolan helped out. I can go on forever. We don't have all the time. Great stuff. I'm really happy with what they did and how they supplied not only supply new URLs and vendors, also validating them. That's amazing stuff. So if we go to the next slide, we try to look at what are the differences, because there are local differences, and we just looked at the number of vendors in specific subcategories and where their headquarters are located. So this is not saying anything about market share or revenue or amount of customers. So let that be clear. But it's just it gives an impression of where the emphasis is. And like I pointed out earlier with content, you see I'm not saying it's a European thing, but we have a lot of tools in Europe just to make sure we cater for all those different language needs or strategy needs. Whereas, United States is really dominant in search and ads and social and account-based marketing. To be honest, when I help out companies building, crafting their stacks, account-based marketing is not yet a big thing. Which is a shame because it's very powerful. But yeah, we have to, I think top of my head, there are only 4 account-based marketing vendors in Europe. So yeah, this gives a great overview. And I think also, and I forgot to mention that because in the previous slides, you saw that management is really growing. It's, I think, the fastest growing category. And you will see that and read that in the report that we will distribute. But also here, it's a European thing because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, it goes hand in hand with all that laborious manual labor to create all that content and tailor it. And yes, there are tools, and I know Scott Sweeney in the States is working on AI-generated content and an overview of those kind of tools, and we collaborate with him and share vendors. But I think it's really the 4th wave and maybe even the 4th decade. But help me out here.
Yeah. It definitely feels like, as the acceleration of the clock speed of marketing and digital business in general, has increased, particularly over these past couple years. Yeah, we really are recognizing that very often it is our management approaches and processes that become the bottleneck. And so it would naturally make sense that there'd be a lot of innovation, of software to help us with that. Software can't magically solve all of it, but it is definitely a contributing capability as we continue to evolve. And by the way, if you're looking at this and you're like trying to zoom in and let me look at that, I assure you all of these graphs that you're seeing here are available in the State of Martech report that you can download. In fact, actually, it's on the docs little tab there here in Goldcast if you want to get that, or the landscape PDF. But getting the landscape PDF is only getting you a tiny slice of what we have to share with you today. And for that, turn this over to you, friends.
Yes. For some of you, I think when we showed a couple of minutes ago the real version, the big version, the PDF, the official version, you saw already a URL in there, and it says martechmap.com. You can register there, not only look into a database, but you can just search our database. So this time we did it in a completely different way. Last year, Scott and I entered the conversation of it's simply not possible to source all those logos and in the same size, with a slogan, without a slogan, with a name, company name, or it's a hell of a job. And then companies tend to update their logo. So we thought, why don't we drink our own champagne and democratize what we do? So now we're using favorite icons, and we source them every month, and then we update them. And if you want to change something in our landscape, just update your favorite icon. And that applies also to some extra data later on that we have democratized. So that's how we thought we'll do this in a different way. And if we're talking about democratization of what we're doing, here's another one. So you can now print your own landscape. So from here, there's a button that says PDF. You click it and you can print your own. It's a bit of fiddling around, and then you have your own. Those downloads will have clickable links in there. So, and that's, I think, a huge improvement. You can make snapshots every time you want. We update this regularly, and I think you can have a lot of fun with that. If you look at what else you can do in this interactive version of the landscape, is that you can use the magnifying glasses to make it a little bit larger if the logos are too small. On the other one, they were too small, I would say, but they're great for creating an overview. And you can enlarge the icons even more and even bigger, a third version. And if they're large enough, sometimes you just want to zoom in and have a look at it. And the beauty is that you can even hover over, and we have some additional data. So it's the vendor name in there, the logo a bit bigger. We also use Twitter bios that we have scraped. So, and if there's no Twitter bio, then we tend to use the meta title of a website or a meta description. So just like with the favorite icons, it's democratized content. That saves a lot of work. We just need to validate the country and the category and then take it from there. And that's what we don't do on our own. We do this with a lot of enthusiasts. On our website, there's this button, please click it every now and then, with contributors. It's insane how many people are helping out, which is, I think, a very good sign of how vital this market is. Yeah, and if you want more details, we have now links, deep links for destinations like Cabinet M and CDP Institute, if you want to, and we'll add more of those. We're in conversation with more companies that would like to have a deep link to that specific vendor. So why not? Next, you can filter on country, like we used to do here in Europe a lot, but now we can do it for any country. And zoom in. You can even search for specific words, those words like code, for instance, low code or whatever. You can look it up, and then it looks for names of vendors and Twitter bios, meta title, meta description. It's a very simple thing. You see also counters in every single corner, upper right corner of every subcategory. So we just have a good idea of how big it is and how many there are. I think you can have a lot of fun. Also, you will see in the navigation bar in the online version a button with clapping hands, and it's to applaud for all these people. We just wanted to give all these people a face, or at least an overview. Yeah, you might want to call this the super gratitude graphic. Very happy, very pleased that all these people helped us out, because it's really amazing what they do. They took sometimes days to find new tools to validate them. And here it is. What you see is that all these people come back to us and say, seriously, it's a hard job, but boy, I learned a lot. I know a lot more about Martech. I feel a lot more confident. And here's the thing I tell at business schools, but also with clients, you know, here's the recipe, the Martech doctor recipe. Take 30 minutes every week, maybe, or maybe 15 minutes, and just explore one of those icons, one that, you know, catch your eye and you want to have a look into. Maybe do even a free trial and figure out, I want to, you know, give yourself a goal and say, I want to do X, Y, Z with this tool. Go in, and maybe it fails, maybe it works. Regardless, you will learn a lot. And that's, I think, the core message of what we want to convey today. And with that, Scott, back to you.
Awesome. And yes, please join the list of contributors. We would be delighted to have your collaboration with this effort. So I want to talk very briefly about the question that always comes up when we release this landscape, which is, how does this thing keep expanding? How do you reconcile expansion and consolidation in the Martech landscape? And first thing is to assure you, yes, consolidation happens, acquisitions happen. I just shared the other week some data from the folks at Luma Partners. The number of acquisitions in Martech, including the number of acquisitions greater than $100 million, have continued to be quite significant over the past several years. So yes, Martech does continue to consolidate. But the challenge is it's consolidating in a macro environment in which the amount of software in the world just continues to increase at a prodigious rate. I've shared this quote before that IDC has estimated over 500 million apps and services will be in the cloud by 2023. And only a tiny fraction of them are commercially packaged solutions like what we see in Martech. A whole bunch of them are custom too. But you see this continuous expansion that happens within just the total software that is available out in the market. And I won't go too deep into this model, but having tried to answer this question many, many times over the past decade, the pattern that really seemed to emerge was not all software in the cloud is equal. There's some software, particularly foundational platforms like AWS and Google Cloud and Azure that are actually highly consolidated. But then on top of that, you have these, API platforms for developers. You, of course, then have the app platforms for different domains, like all the wonderful app platforms, we know in the Martech space. And what's fascinating is on those foundations of cloud platforms, API platforms, and app platforms, it really is possible for new software companies to stand on the shoulders of giants, and augment on top of those foundations. So that's part of now why you see this explosion in the quantity happening there. And of course, even that much more happening on the custom development side of things. But what's fascinating is, in some ways, the consolidation that happens on the left side with cloud platforms, API platforms, and app platforms actually facilitates the growth of these specialist apps and custom apps, partly at a technical level of what they enable, but also, app platforms increasingly have marketplaces for the ecosystems of solutions, that integrate with them, something I'm familiar with in my work at HubSpot, right? I mean, they actually help customers be able to discover the most relevant specialized apps that plug into those platforms, and this is, again, kind of like what you saw with, Apple and Android consolidating mobile platforms was one of the things that helped make it possible to have an explosion of millions of mobile apps. I don't know if we'll get to millions of Martech, but never say never. And of course, a question that everyone has around this is like, okay, this is great to have all these tools, but how do we make sure this integrates together? And this is the number one issue in the Martech industry. We've seen it in survey after survey. And increasingly now, the vendors, both the platforms and the specialist apps, have been investing a lot more effort here. It's not just about integrating data. It's, increasingly thinking about integrating workflow, integrating elements of UI, having standards of governance around the particular ecosystems for platforms so that you have things that are in a certain compliance or meet certain SLAs. And one of the things that became clear to me over this past year is because of these integration layers, we're now starting to see software that isn't so much focused on trying to consolidate the Martech industry, which has clearly been an uphill battle, but is instead shifting to this idea of aggregating both apps and data, across not just the Martech stack, but the broader business stack. Now, these words sound similar, consolidation and aggregation, but they mean very different things. I mean, consolidation is to say, okay, you'll take this large set of things and jam it down into just a few number, or maybe just one. Aggregation is much more about taking a large set of things and making it easier to consume or access them through a single source. And of course, we have tons of examples of this, social media platforms, highly consolidated, but they're aggregating millions of social media creators. Just mentioned the one with smartphone platforms, consolidated, aggregating millions of mobile apps. But we're now seeing the same dynamic inside the tech stacks of companies. Great examples with data warehouse platforms, a fairly consolidated, market of the leaders, but they're all aggregating a tremendous number of data sources from across, companies. In fact, the more data sources and destinations you have, the more value you tend to be getting out of these aggregation solutions. CRM platforms, very similar thing. They're essentially trying to aggregate, customer touch points. The more different kinds of customer touch points you have, the more that they're getting aggregated to the CRM, the more value you're getting from that. And so what's interesting here is when we look at this through the lens of aggregation, there's been all these companies lately that have really leaned into that, at different layers. We mentioned data warehouses for data. With workflow, you have, workflow automation. Shout out to our sponsor, Workato here. At the UI level, I mean, even think about tools like Teams and Slack that have been helping to aggregate, a certain kind of interface to so many other different tools. Shared analytics. Of course, we have domain-specific platforms like CRMs. And then even at the governance layer, this explosion of SaaS management platforms that help you manage a very large portfolio of SaaS products, privacy and data governance, identity access. So we start to see this, aggregation really taking play. Now, we could do a whole webinar on this for another time, but, in addition to those horizontal aggregation layers, we still see aggregation happening, from key platforms in particular domains like CRM or ERP or HRM. And all this is to simply suggest, I don't know that we're going to see one winner on horizontal versus vertical anytime soon, but I think we're going to see stacks that kind of leverage the best of both. And just one last thing I wanted to shout out on this topic of aggregation, because this is really where we're seeing it in practice the most, is at the data layer. You know, the whole data ops ecosystem, you know, across the organization has really started to get connected. And this is where now Martech is no longer just isolated in its own little, you know, silo of, you know, marketing data, but increasingly is connected to the data sources of the rest of the organization, is able to contribute to them, is able to leverage them. And this gives us so much capability as marketers. I think this is probably the single most exciting trend to me happening in Martech right now. And it sort of ties into this whole thing of, you know, we've talked a bit about, you know, the rise from big data to big ops. Where big ops is all about how do we take advantage of all this data? And so all these different ops teams, you know, sisters and brothers to marketing ops and sales ops, you know, have all been emerging. And what's really exciting now is seeing them start to come together and connect the threads across them as well, too. All right, so that's the theoretical model side of it. I'd like to turn this over now to Franz to talk a little bit about stack dynamics. Oh, wait, Franz, I forgot. I had one piece of data I wanted to share, which is, you know, when we share this landscape of like all these different, you know, solutions, people are like, are folks actually adopting all this? And the data is, yes, they are. You know, I mentioned those SaaS management platforms earlier. They actually connect to your stack and they help discover all of the SaaS solutions you're using. So instead of a survey where people just, you know, state the ones that come to mind, the SaaS management platform actually discovers all the real SaaS subscriptions you have. And then they, most of those vendors publish the data. This is some data from Xylo, which is one of those vendors. And you can see like, yeah, the average number of, you know, SaaS products and subscriptions in a 1,000 to 5,000 employee organization is 330. One of the things I found interesting was some of their data saying like, okay, these stacks are also fluid, like they're constantly changing. Some things go away, new things come in. You know, those say 2,500 to 5,000 employee companies on average have 9 new SaaS apps that are being onboarded every 30 days. So whew, pretty wild. But all right, Fred, sorry about that. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That number is staggering, and I think it only means one thing. We need to up our skills in Martech. And I read this quote in a survey and it really hit home. It said something like, technology is only as advanced as the person operating it. I think that says it all. So it's really a focus on the people and how mature are we in handling software and understanding the added value. And the first thing we normally do is think, okay, technology will solve everything. And it really resembles the hype cycle of Gartner. Gartner came up with the hype cycle for the market at large, for new technologies, how we introduce them, how we embrace them. But consistently, when we do our stack research with our 700 stack database, we learn that exactly the same hype cycle takes place in your organization. In fact, with you, also with me. So first time I see a tool, I go like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And the expectations go through the roof. And then you go like trying it out. That's why I advise the 30 minutes, you know, doctor's recipe. And you go like, oh boy, that's not doing this, it's not doing that. But actually when you're at the, you know, bottom of the valley of despair, as they also tend to call it, you go like, but it did this and it helped me out with that. And so those three things really are making a difference in terms of driving value. And yeah, we all know that. I think we only use 3% of Microsoft Word, for instance, or Google Docs. So yeah, that's exactly where that point is, where you understand, okay, we bought a Ferrari, but actually we needed a Volkswagen because we just learned how to ride a bike. And we have to be honest about that and open. And all too often when I come with and enter conversations in corporate, this conversation has not taken place yet. And that's more of a thing that we need to conduct and have that conversation and understand what the real value is of software and technology. And this is where I think marketing operations plays an extremely important role. I think back of that graph where we showed about this, the different subcategories, management being bigger and growing. I think that also has to do with the fact that we need to equip marketing ops people with tools to get a grip of, you know, all the tooling we have, all the resources, all the talents, the skills, the processes, the campaigns, the calendars, the performance. So yeah, this is what we consistently see. And if you plot this on maturity levels, which is the next slide, then you see in our research that there's a kind of a correlation, maybe not causation, but correlation between the maturity goes up and also the number of tools. But what you don't see here is that it has, again, this type of hype cycle. First, we consolidate, and Scott just pointed it out with the app platforms. You know, first we aggregate, accumulate a lot of tools, then we have to consolidate before we aggregate. And aggregation implies we need a lot of tools to connect to those platforms. And that's what you also see reflected here. So you gradually, if you go from stage 1 to 5, and level 1 is just ad hoc. It's based on the capability maturity model of Carnegie Mellon Institute. And it says basically chaotic and ad hoc. If we jump to number 3, we have everything consolidated, so we're good to go. And number 5 is we're completely in sync with our environment. Think of a Google AdWords, for instance. You know, they don't need to plug in new processes, new people, new technologies if the demand is higher. You know, it's just the bidding and tendering in flow with the market, and it's, you know, almost lights out marketing. So those are the different levels, and you see gradually an increase of tools, but in that hype cycle manner and fashion. What you also see here is the long tail, the Martech long tail. So based on the 700 stacks, and I believe we have 1,400 different tools mentioned in there that correspond with our landscape. Of course, we use that input for the landscape. And you see the long tail down below and the head of the long tail in the top. Those are 50 tools that cover 50% of all the mentions. And yeah, you might want to call them kind of app platforms and say, those are the basics, that's where you start. And then you plug in the long tail tools, the really specialist tools that are out there. So I think that's how you can read and use the long tail. What we also did is we looked at the supply and the demand side of the Martech market. So the dark pieces here represent the number of vendors in a specific subcategory. The light parts represent the mentions of those tools in stacks. So if you take the top one, which is search and social advertising, you see that there's a very small amount of suppliers that dominate the entire market. This is what we call a monopoly, for instance. If you take the lowest one of the yellow block, which is influencers, I know it's hard to read, it's small, but it's influencers, you see a lot of suppliers and a lot less representation in the stacks. Other ones like sales automation, enablement, and intelligence, the top green one, you see it's quite imbalanced. So this tells us a little bit about these micro markets and where it is heading. And we did a deeper dive into that and trying to understand these subcategories. So these colors correspond with the super graphic. And we started to look at all those vendors and when the year they were founded. That's the x-axis. And the y-axis is where we have a look at how often are they mentioned in stacks. And this helps us to tell, for instance, if there's not they're very old and not in every stack, that means they're well established and maybe a niche. So that's the down right corner. If you take the left corner down, then you see those are niche and growing. So you have to keep an eye on them. CDP is in there, and I expect it will go up and show up in more and more stacks inevitably, and then it will be for now maybe established and growing. So this is how you read this particular slide over here. And I think, Scott, it's interesting to have a look at, you know, these are the mainstream type of subcategories. And I talked about the hype cycle, and I think further down the hype cycle, also initially, but further, you will use a lot of low code, no code, and start building your stuff yourself because you know exactly what your requirements are.
Yeah, this is always one of the things that amazes me is, with the Martech landscape, of course, our focus is on, commercially packaged solutions. But the data, our friends at Learning Experience Alliance, formerly Martech Alliance, did a fairly large survey last summer asking companies, okay, what were they using for their customer/marketing data platform? And like the blue things on the right there are kind of like the classic, trade-offs between best of breed versus single vendor suite that, we've seen over the years. But then, yeah, it was on the left, recognizing, either 16% that had like built their own solution, perhaps using, tools from things like AWS, or really the largest group, 38.5%, that is hybrid. So they're leveraging these commercial, off-the-shelf solutions as, their foundations, and then they're augmenting them with pieces that are very specific to their business. And so, yeah, we don't always get a cover, that is kind of in some ways like the dark Martech, that is very hard to discover. But the evidence would suggest there's quite a bit of it out there, which again, kind of leads to, this environment of leveraging these capabilities and managing them. This is a major professional challenge. And it's clearly one of the reasons why the rise of Martech has also been in parallel by the rise of marketing operations.
Yeah, and we teamed up last year, Scott, in Marketing Ops Now podcast series, and spoke about marketing ops. And I think it's more than 10 years ago, I wrote a book on marketing, co-wrote a book on marketing resource management, now called Marketing Operations. And I was almost forgetting about it, like, it's not going to happen. But now you see it booming everywhere, but especially for now outside Europe. And so I did a LinkedIn poll last year, end of last year, and asked, okay, do you have something that called marketing ops, with the mandate and with the budget and stuff? And we got interesting results. And then it occurred to me, like, why don't I just look at all the profiles of the people that voted and try to figure out where they come from? And astonishingly enough, we saw that 80% of the US-based people that voted said, yeah, we have marketing ops. Whereas here in Europe, and my friend Ralph Strauss in Germany confirms this with his own research, and he says, yeah, we call it differently in Europe. So only 30% has an official marketing ops, and I think the other 34% still has to do a coming out and say, oh, yes, I am also marketing ops. So far, it's called project and steering, campaign management, blah, blah, or admin, or even project secretaries. I've heard the most bizarre definitions. So I think there's in Europe still a lot to do. And if you look at the right-hand side, we did a follow-up survey, a poll on LinkedIn. And there we asked, okay, so what is your ratio of marketing person to marketing ops person? Is it a 1 to 5, 1 to 10, 1 to 15? And what we learned was also very insightful is that the bigger companies have a lower ratio, which could mean, in my eyes, two things, but I could be completely wrong. It's or they're highly immature and forgot to, set up such a team, or they're scaling really well. Because they might have, if you're a bigger company, you might have had some more time to work on that. I don't know. What is your take on that, Scott?
Yeah, hopefully more of the latter than the former. But hey, I know actually we're coming up to the 45-minute mark. And so we've got some trains to keep on schedule. Just to remind you, everyone, you can get a copy of this full Martech report from the docs section here in Goldcast, as well as the landscape. And of course, you can visit martechmap.com and yeah, just sign up for a free account there to be able to start to use that landscape. We don't have time for questions here, but we will definitely be following up, with questions. Please engage with us through, social and other mechanisms. So what's going to happen here is you're going to be sent for a 15-minute break to be able to, do anything that you need to do in your 15-minute break. Also visit sponsor booths. And then we'll be coming back at the top of the hour to go through all the entries to the stackies and the winners there. You won't want to miss that. Come back to the agenda, click that next session. And wow, we will see you then.
Thank you so much.